I can't believe 10 years have passed since we first started ABC in Westport.
I know. It's been incredible. It's been a great journey. I'll probably cry because that's what I did back in the days when we were getting this show on the road.
And I remember that first welcoming barbecue we had, and I remember
At Lisa's,
and I remember being out in the backyard and the boys and their parents and all various board members and supporters. And I remember Dave Driscoll coming over to me and saying, "I just realized what a responsibility we have taken on."
The highlight, I think, of my experience with the organization was very early on. One of the highlights, I should say. Maybe you could edit that. One of the highlights very early on was we were at a meeting at Ann Pollock's house, and the organization had just gotten underway. And Dave Driscoll, who is one of the most fabulous people I've ever met, sat there and he said to a room full of women, basically, "You're all part of my fantasy." And we all looked at him and said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "My fantasy is that we start a corporation and we raise money and we just give it all away." And I thought, what a terrific man this is, that this is what his fantasy is, and it was similar to what we all wanted.
I think the effectiveness of this program can best be summed up by what one of our early graduates told me at the time he graduated, Anthony Soto. He came from Hartford, from a poor neighborhood there, and I did an exit interview with him, and I asked him, I said, you're a smart, motivated, self-advocate. If you would have stayed in Hartford, I'm sure you would have risen to the top of your class, and you would have done just fine. Do you really think that coming to Westport for your school years made a difference? And he looked at me and he started laughing. and he said, "My friends from middle school who were the top of the class, we were getting A's just for showing up to class. None of my friends from middle school are really headed anywhere at this point. My best friend from middle school, a woman, has a 2-year-old kid. This was at the time he was graduating high school. He said, coming to Westport has radically changed my life, and I've always remembered that."
Then Lisa and I decided to get into the what we would call a dog and pony show. We took it on the road and got all our friends, had lots of coffees, lots of community coffees, and that's sort of how we got the word out.
Each coffee, we always got 1 or 2 people who got really excited about the idea.
Yes.
And that was how we built our...
Absolutely. And we went and visited the local programs in the area. We went to New Canaan, we went to Darien, we went to Wilton, and saw how their houses were operating, and thought, just be so exciting to bring this here. And then one day, we got to a point where we were looking for real estate, and Cheryl found this house, and we were all like, do we make an offer? Can we buy it? With what money? How are we going to do this? And a bank actually, lent us money, and we've ultimately paid off the mortgage. And so many people got involved in donating their time and their services to renovate the house. And it's so beautiful now, but I remember what it looked like when we first got here. There were broken windows, and it certainly didn't look like this.
Unitarian Church, one of the very first faith organizations to back us, let us come in. There were a bunch of meetings, nobody showed up.
A couple of our founders came to a PTA president's meeting and did a presentation about A Better Chance and what they were hoping to do in Westport. I loved the idea from the start. I thought this is something I could embrace and become involved with, and very soon after that, I think I started out on the advisory board, and then soon after became a board member, and was here the first year we opened the house.
It's interesting to think of how much work went into it. The beginning was really fun because there were 5 of us, and there was no decision too small for the 5 of us to all have an opinion about.
This program had something to do with where they are today and the opportunities. And for Anthony, he's the first one in his family to have ever gone to college.
I remember when we first started interviewing kids for the house,
we didn't actually have a house we could show them. We didn't even have resident directors. And we just sort of kept saying, who's going to send their kids? You know, it's the strength of the national program, and we know we're really good people that are working really hard at this, that are going to make it a great program, but what parents are going to send their 14-year-olds to us? And we were so fortunate to have such great kids and such great parents who trusted us with their sons in those first couple of years.
And every year there's a sophomore. I mean, it seems like every year there's a sophomore we think will never make it. And the next thing you know, they're graduating from Cornell. And, you know, they look fabulous. And
I just think it's the greatest organization. I love the boys. I think we make a difference in their lives and in their families' lives. And I think they have made a huge difference to the town of Westport and the Staples community. And I was at a time in my life where I felt that if they needed leadership, that I was willing to help provide that, because I think it's such an important undertaking and message, and for so many reasons. So the 2 years that I spent had some peaks and valleys, but was a very rewarding experience.
Just the getting to know them and the things that were so surprising to them about this town. I took Shamir with me one time to take my son to the pediatrician, and we went to Bay Street Pediatrics, and it's a tiny little colonial house, and he said, "This is your doctor's office?" And I thought, yep, this is just like this little small town that we live in. And they loved going to Winslow Park and walking around looking at all the dogs, and we just had so much fun. It was a really tight little small group initially.
Because other kids have networks of parents and siblings that sort of tell them what things are interesting to do, and we wanted to create that for the kids here. And I think the upperclassmen have been phenomenal in supporting their younger housemates.
We had mentors up at school, teachers who were mentors that sort of kept an eye on those kids in the beginning to make sure that they were making friends and acclimating into the school okay.
My daughter Kristen, after her freshman year in high school, came to me and said, I want to be a host sister and I want to have an ABC scholar as part of our family, and convinced us that if we had had a son, he would have had sisters. And so we made the application, and the next year welcomed Jeff Arias into our home.
ABC of Westport is doing a phenomenal job in not only helping them academically but socially, and giving them opportunities outside of academics, but also being able to be involved in extracurricular activities, whether it's connected to the school or connected to the community or even outside of the community.
Being a president, co-president, was very interesting, and it was anything to do with being involved in the boys' lives. To me, was a huge benefit.
So the guys here, they're a great bunch of guys. They're very dedicated, they're driven, and they want to do well. And you know, I respect the fact that they took a chance in leaving their own homes, leaving their comfort zone, and coming out to this community to try to further their education. And I respect them, and I think they're a great bunch of kids.
And I think another thing to be said about this program is we probably originally conceived it as taking the very top kids and sending them off to the best Ivy League schools, and you know, basically having a group of superstars coming through here. And we've certainly had our share of really smart kids, who a lot of whom have gone on to Ivy League schools. But when you're really involved with this program, you realize that it's not about taking kids and sending them to the Ivy League. It's about taking kids and just making them the best that they can be. And really the graduates that I'm most proud of are some of the ones that struggled at Staples. And they struggled because their schooling was so poor beforehand, and maybe they didn't go to the Ivy League, but it was Staples and the ABC program that really made a difference to their lives, maybe even more than those superstar kids who come through the program.